human beings have the longest developmental period of any creature, and it can last almost 2 decades, let's say. And what that means is that a force that powerful can easily go wrong. A mother shouldn't be so kind. She should take care of her children, but not offer them too much being a convenient house in the midst of danger, but not only a house literally made out of candy and cake. Oh, the mother who offers her children too much, who does everything for them, who goes above and beyond the call of duty to announce to the world her virtuous compassion as the highest possible moral virtue, is also the hovering helicopter mother who ends up devouring her own children. So if it looks and sounds too good to be true, there's some real possibility that it is. I remember my mother told me once, she died very recently last year. She was a very agreeable person and a compassionate person, but she had a spine and she didn't overindulge her children or overprotect them. And I left home when I was about 16. I'd been having some friction with my father, which was some him and some me, perhaps even mostly me. And then once I left and went to college, our relationship renormalized and maintained itself quite positively from that time forward. My mom said to me, after I had returned from college, when we were talking about having left and the fact that things had settled up, she said, and the conflict that accompanied my leaving, she said, if it was too good at home, you'd never leave. And I thought that was my mother in a nutshell, because she was a very pleasant person and a very caring person and hospitable, but she had enough sense to know that a little bit of pushing her children out of the nest was actually a very positive thing. And this evil witch is all too good, and announcing that continually. Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump red cheeks, she muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him into a little stable, and shut him in behind a grated door. He might scream as he liked. That was of no use. Then she went to Gretel, shook her till she awoke, and cried, "Get up, lazy thing, fetch some water, and cook something good for thy brother. He's in the stable outside and is to be made fat." And so that's an interesting twist in the story too, because mothers obviously feed their children, and that's part of maternal behavior, but to overfeed a child is again to make a pathology of care, right? To make a show of that maternal solicitude at the cost of the child's health and well-being. And so that's the meaning of the motif, that she's fattening up her ersatz son, her temporary son, for no other reason than to devour him. He is in the stable outside and is to be made fat. When he is fat, I will eat him. Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was all in vain. She was forced to do what the wicked witch ordered her. And now the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the woman crept to the little stable and cried, "Hansel, stretch out thy finger that I may feel if thou wilt soon be fat." Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it and thought it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. Well, that's another indication of Hansel's self-sufficiency. He's attentive enough and intelligent enough to notice what the old woman is up to, quite clearly not to deceive himself about her intent, and in consequence of that careful attentiveness and refusal to deceive himself, he plays a trick on her and indicates to her that he is by no means optimally positioned to serve as a meal. When 4 weeks had gone by and Hansel still continued thin, she was seized with impatience and would not wait any longer. "Hola, Gretel," she cried to the girl. "Be active and bring some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean, tomorrow I will kill him and cook him." Ah, how the poor little sister did lament when she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow down over her cheeks. Again, an indication that she really loved her brother. A contrary attitude might be that she was quite relieved that it was Hansel who was serving as main course rather than her. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts in the forests had but devoured us, we should at any rate have died together." That's hammering home that motif of union in the face of adversity. "Just keep thy noise to thyself," said the old woman. "All that won't help thee at all." Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the cauldron with the water and light the fire. "We will bake first," said the old woman. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. "Creep in," said the witch. "See if it is properly heated, so that we can shut the bread in." And when once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in there. Then she would eat her too. But Gretel, also being an awake child, properly taken care of, let's say, by her brother, unwilling to deceive herself about the motivation of the woman who's just too good to be true. But Gretel saw what she had in her mind and said, "I do not know how I am to do it. How do you get in?" "Silly goose," said the old woman, "the door is big enough. Look, I can get in myself." And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel, who's an enterprising young woman, gave her a push that drove her far into it and shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Oh, then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death. So Hansel and Gretel are awake enough to defend themselves against the evil machinations of the camouflaged witch, the witch camouflaged in virtue. And, you know, one of the things Carl Jung said about pathological families was that children are also often offered an easy way out by an over-solicitous parent, for example, but that they don't necessarily have to take the bait. So you could imagine a lonely mother with a child who has, maybe a cold. And the mother is hoping that the child could stay home from school so that she has company. And she suggests to the child, verbally and non-verbally, that his or her state of physical health is sufficiently compromised so that staying home from school might be justifiable. And the child knows full well that he's not particularly sick, but takes the bait and then enters into a pathological covenant with the mother such that he exaggerates his proclivity for illness and brings illness onto himself in so doing, and she benefits from the fact that she can make her maternal solicitude manifest publicly, benefit from that display of virtue, and also not have to be alone. And so Hansel and Gretel are not playing games of that sort. They're maybe because they're bonded together and taking care of each other, maybe because they're oriented properly, they're capable of fending for themselves and taking action when necessary and not falling prey to the machinations of the over-demonstrative mother figure who, in truth, wants to devour them. Children have a moral responsibility too, and that's a tricky thing to manage, but it takes two to tango. And that doesn't mean I'm blaming the child in situations where the family becomes pathological. I had people in my clinical practice who were offered pathological invitations, let's say, by their parents, and they resisted instead of falling prey to them and manage to free themselves from the situation. And so, everybody has their destiny, and that includes children. And we make our beds even when we're very young.